The public in the Philippines wakes up to a new rhythm and hears a dull rumble over the bay. Heavy American transports appear on the runway, and M1A2 Abrams roll out of the dark, holds one after another, and the very landscape of Subic Bay changes because this armor speaks louder than press releases, and any guesses about the plans of the Allies turn into a reality that can be seen without binoculars. The Abrams comes out into the sun, like the experience of past wars collected in metal. The 120mm gun keeps the target on bumps and in smoke. The digital fire system tells the gunner the right moment. Thermal imagers penetrate the humid air of the tropics, and even before the first shot, it becomes clear that the rules of conversation in the region are now different, and that heavy equipment has not arrived for the sake of a parade. There is no fuss on the platform, although everything is in full swing. Gunsmiths open hatches and close magazines. Mechanics check the pressure and power supply of modules. Crews undergo a short briefing right on board, and this quiet routine is more important than loud slogans, because it is here that a tank turns into a force and not a picture. The column takes a course along the fence, and the air trembles with heat. Tracks rustle on concrete. Dust spreads like a thin veil. The commander in the tower gives short commands, and the even voice of the dispatcher sounds in the headphones. Discipline becomes part of the show of force, because in an area where every gesture is visible to satellites, there is no chance. Why the Philippines needs this? The answer is simple and harsh. The islands are at the entrance to the South China Sea, where trade routes and political ambitions converge. And the appearance of Abrams means that the coast gets a solid support, and the alliance is ready to close weak points and deploy heavy forces faster than anyone can change the situation. Further on, there is a firing range on the outskirts. The sand is whitish and sticky. A short command, and the tower goes into the target sector. The shot rolls over the hills and disappears in the hot air. The impact passes like a wave along the ground. The silhouette of the model flashes in the thermal imager. The viewer understands that this is not a museum rental or a show for the camera. This is the laying out of a new scenario on the ground, where any turns are possible. The Abrams' strength is in the connection. The tank is woven into a network of communications and intelligence. It is guided by drones and corrected by artillery, and therefore every jerk and every turn makes sense even outside the frame. Seconds turn into an advantage, and the vehicle itself becomes a node in a single scheme, where information is as important as armor. The parking lot is in almost geometric order. There are tools and spare parts, kits near each side. Cables are twisted into clamps. Fire extinguishers are positioned strictly according to the marks. Engineers go under the bottom and check the hydraulics. Armored vehicles go over the tracks and monitor the tension. The optics module is changed on the turret. In the tropics, where salt and humidity wear away metal, maintenance is the first line of defense. Society reacts differently, and that's normal. Some film the columns and wave to the crews. Some ask questions about the risks, but neighbors still see these images and count the cars and boxes, read the stripes and labels on the containers, assess the speed of unloading and the composition of the service units. Each detail is then put together in response to the main question: how long and on what scale will the presence continue? The camera takes a general shot of the road and white dust. The Abrams goes into perspective, and it becomes clear that it is not the number of buildings that is impressive, but the speed with which heavy equipment appears where it is needed. Today, it is Subic Bay. Tomorrow, another port, then an island with a short strip. Logistics turns into a weapon, and the synchronicity of the transport, the railway, and the tank company sets a new pace for politics. Closer to the vehicle, the character is visible. The commander's panorama gives a 360-degree view. The stabilizer keeps the barrel in sight on bumps. The thermal imager discerns the silhouette through smoke and foliage. The crew acts as a single organism: commander, gunner, driver, loader. And in this choreography, There are no unnecessary movements, because the winner is the one who decides faster and works without failures. The effect of the appearance of armored vehicles is already visible, educational and political, because joint maneuvers change the standards of interaction and increase the confidence of allies, and strategic, because it makes it possible to quickly assemble an armored group, cover supply nodes, and create a risk threshold for any aggression. The question, why tanks on the islands, gets a simple answer, so that there is a solid support near the coast and forces on land that will hold and deploy a bridgehead when needed. In the evening, the heat subsides and salt and dust settle on the armor. Duty lights come on in the parking lot. Crews go to a briefing. On the screens are maps and restricted areas, fuel and water schedules, backup routes and time windows. An ambulance is on duty nearby. On the desks of the staff officers are radio compatibility tables. This quiet planning layer is the backbone of the force that rarely gets into the frame but holds everything else. Night brings a different rhythm. Drone lights hang over the bay. Coast Guard ships sail on the horizon. Batteries are charged, and communications channels are checked on the runway to the hum of diesel engines. The tanks themselves stand silently, but this silence is not about rest. It is about readiness to go out again in the morning, when the air becomes cooler and the observation range increases. The next day, the wheels leave the concrete and the column goes deep into the island. The road goes along rice terraces and overgrown hills. Bridges tremble under the weight of the tracks. Local residents film on their phones and wave to the children of the crew. And in these simple gestures, there is an understanding that events will not return to their former silence, and that the presence of armored vehicles changes the feeling of security, not only for the military, but also for everyone who lives near the sea. Instructors conduct short lessons on the side of the road. They show how to work with smoke grenades and how to use a rangefinder in poor visibility, how to reduce the time it takes to enter a position, and how to quickly change the sector of fire. Philippine officers watch every move and immediately copy the conclusions into field notebooks, because experience that can be touched is more important than hundreds of pages of theory. There is working silence at the command post. Operators are watching the image from the UAV. Spotters are checking the coordinate grid. The communications officer is holding a backup frequency in case of interference. Tanks at the training ground seem like a separate story, but in reality, they are one layer with maps, graphs, supply tables, a scene where logistics and information work on equal terms with armor. Meanwhile, regional capitals are holding their own briefings. Footage of unloading is shown on screens. Experts compare the silhouettes of the vehicles, try to understand the modifications by numbers and markings, estimate the weight of the ammunition and fuel consumption, calculate how many flights the transporters needed. Each such exercise ends with the same conclusion. The Allies know how to quickly assemble, and this will have to be taken into account in the plans. Among local traders and fishermen, conversations are simpler.